Zariah Kane slid the thick contract across the gleaming conference table, her voice as cold as the New York winter outside. Marry me, Bryn. Carry my child through IVF, and in 5 years you walk away richer by $2 million. It's all business, no emotions involved. Bryn's breath caught as the words sank in her mind, reeling from the shocking proposal that promised salvation for her dying mother, but threatened to shatter her soul. She sat there in the sleek conference room of Kane Innovations headquarters, the city buzzing far below them, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in her chest. At 28, Bryn Thompson had always prided herself on her independence, but the last year had broken her. Her mother Evelyn's cancer diagnosis had drained their savings, and the additional treatments were pushing them into bankruptcy. Moving to New York had been her escape, but now it felt like a trap. The job as a freelance graphic designer paid little, and the surrogacy ad had seemed like a godsend until this moment. Zariah, the 35-year-old CEO, was everything Bryn was not: confident, successful, and seemingly emotionless. But beneath that facade, Bryn sensed a woman trapped by her own empire and family expectations. "Why me?" Bryn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zariah leaned back, crossing her legs. "Because you are clean, no criminal record, no ex-husband drama, and your financial situation makes you reliable. The lawyers have vetted you thoroughly. The child will be mine biologically, but you will carry it, and we will both be listed as parents on the birth certificate to make it legitimate. Publicly, we will be the perfect couple for 2 years, then amicable divorce. Your role is to play the doting wife during events and give birth. In return, your mother's bills are paid in full, and you get the money to start fresh." Bryn felt a wave of nausea. This was not just surrogacy, this was selling a part of her life, her body, her future. But the thought of her mother suffering alone in that small-town hospital made her pause. She thought about the nights she had cried, wondering how to keep the lights on. The moral weight pressed on her. Was it right to bring a child into this calculated arrangement? Would the baby feel the lie? Yet the alternative was losing her mother. After hours of discussion, and reading every line of the 50-page document Bryn signed, the pen felt heavy in her hand, a permanent mark on her soul. 2 weeks later, they had a quick civil ceremony at the courthouse with only 2 witnesses, Zariah's lawyer and a notary. No family, no friends, no white dress. Zariah wore a simple black suit, Bryn a plain blue dress. The judge pronounced them married, and just like that, Bryn Thompson became Bryn Kane on paper. They drove in silence to Zariah's luxurious penthouse in Tribeca, the doorman nodding politely as they entered. The apartment was a masterpiece of modern design, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, sleek furniture, and art pieces that cost more than Bryn's annual income. "This is your home now," Zariah said, leading her to a spacious guest room that was larger than Bryn's entire Brooklyn apartment. Bryn unpacked her few belongings, feeling like an intruder in this world of wealth. That night, as she lay in the king-size bed, the city lights twinkling outside, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. The contract was signed, the marriage was legal, but the real battle was just beginning, the internal fight between survival and her values. Zariah, in her own room, stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. She had built her empire from nothing, but the pressure from her father to continue the family line was suffocating. As a lesbian, she had hidden her truth for years, dating men for show. But this arrangement with Bryn felt different, somehow safer yet terrifying. She could not afford to let emotions in, not when the board was watching her every move, and her father's health was failing fast. The next morning, they sat at the marble island in the kitchen, sharing coffee in awkward silence. Zariah pushed a folder toward her. "The IVF clinic appointment is tomorrow. We start immediately." Bryn nodded, her stomach twisting. She thought of her sister Claire back in Ohio, who would never understand this, who would call it unnatural and sinful. The family pressure was already building in her mind even before the first call home. Zariah noticed her hesitation, and for a split second her mask slipped. "I know this is not ideal for either of us, but we both get what we need." Bryn wanted to believe that, but deep down she knew contracts could not control the heart. The days blurred into preparations, medical tests, legal reviews, and public appearances where they held hands for the cameras, smiling like newlyweds. Each touch sent a confusing spark through Bryn, but she pushed it down, reminding herself this was business. Zariah maintained her distance, polite, but distant, until one evening when they received the first ultrasound image after the successful implantation. Zariah stared at the tiny blob on the screen, her hand unconsciously resting on Bryn's shoulder. For the first time, Bryn saw a crack in the armor, a flicker of genuine hope in those green eyes. But as the reality of the pregnancy set in, Bryn's doubts grew louder. Was she sacrificing her own chance at real love for money? Was Zariah capable of being more than a business partner? The penthouse felt smaller every day, the walls closing in with unspoken questions. Bryn called her mother that night, her voice shaking as she lied about meeting someone special. Evelyn sounded so hopeful it broke her heart. Meanwhile, Zariah received a call from her father Victor demanding details on the sudden marriage. His voice was weak but his words cut deep. "Do not embarrass the family, Zariah. Make this real enough." She hung up, her jaw tight. The price was already mounting for both women in ways the contract never mentioned. As the first trimester began with morning sickness and fatigue, Bryn found herself relying on Zariah more than she wanted. Zariah brought her ginger tea, adjusted her schedule, and sat with her during the rough nights. Their conversations shifted from contract terms to childhood stories, revealing layers neither expected. Yet every time Bryn felt a pull, she reminded herself of the expiration date. This was temporary. The child would bind them, but the love could not. Or could it? The thought terrified her more than anything. Zariah too lay awake questioning her own rules. Bryn was not supposed to matter, but her quiet strength, her dedication to her mother, mirrored something Zariah had lost long ago. The arrangement was supposed to be simple, but the first signs of complication were already appearing in the quiet moments when their eyes met a little too long. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside the penthouse, two women were stepping into a storm of their own making, where every decision carried the weight of future heartbreak. The fake wedding reception for show came 2 months later at a rooftop venue in Soho, filled with Zariah's business associates and a few carefully chosen press. Bryn stood beside her new wife in a designer gown that cost more than her old car, smiling through the toasts and flashing cameras. Zariah's hand rested on her lower back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. To the world, they were the power couple of the year, the CEO and her young creative spouse expecting their first child. But in the private car ride home, Bryn let out a long breath, her shoulders slumping. "That was exhausting," she admitted. Zariah nodded, her expression softening. "You did well. The board is buying it and father is satisfied for now." The pregnancy was progressing, but the physical toll was starting to show. Bryn spent mornings bent over the toilet while Zariah held her hair back without a word of complaint. Their cohabitation had settled into a strange rhythm: shared meals, late night talks about the future, and the occasional argument over small things like Bryn's insistence on keeping her freelance work despite the money. "I need to feel useful," she argued one evening. "I cannot just be the pregnant wife." Zariah crossed her arms. "The contract allows it, but the stress is not good for the baby." Bryn shot back. "The contract does not own my identity." The clash revealed deeper cracks: Zariah's need for control versus Bryn's fear of losing herself. Family pressure mounted when Bryn's sister Claire called after seeing a tabloid photo. "How could you, Bryn? Marrying a woman and having a baby like this? It's against everything we believe. Mom is sick and you are out there playing house for money." Bryn hung up, tears streaming, her chest tight with guilt. The prejudice from her conservative Ohio roots stung, but the money was already saving her mother's life, the treatments now covered. Zariah overheard and for once offered comfort, sitting beside her on the couch. "Families can be cruel when they do not understand. Mine is no different." Victor had sent a stern email questioning the speed of the pregnancy and demanding proof of legitimacy. Zariah replied with medical reports, but the stress showed in her pacing the living room at night. The IVF had worked on the first try, but the emotional weight was heavier than expected. During the first ultrasound, where they heard the heartbeat, Zariah reached for Bryn's hand instinctively. Their fingers intertwined and neither pulled away immediately. That night Bryn lay awake, the warmth of that touch lingering. She had always known she was attracted to women, but life in a small town had forced her to bury it. Now with Zariah it was surfacing in dangerous ways. Zariah in her office the next day stared at the ultrasound photo on her desk. The child was real now, not just a clause in a contract. She had spent years building walls to protect her company and her heart, but Bryn was chipping away at them without trying. A board meeting brought new tension, one investor openly questioning the marriage as a publicity stunt. Zariah defended it fiercely, her voice steady, but inside she felt the walls of her secret life closing in. Back at the penthouse she found Bryn resting on the couch, a hand on her growing bump. "You okay?" Zariah asked, sitting close enough that their knees touched. Bryn nodded, but her eyes betrayed the fear. What if the baby senses this is not real? What kind of parents are we? Zariah had no easy answer. We will figure it out, she said, but the words felt hollow. As the second trimester brought more energy, they attended charity events arm in arm, playing the part perfectly. Yet in private the conversations deepened, Zariah sharing stories of her lonely childhood, with the demanding father Bryn talking about her dreams of opening her own design studio. The bond was growing, but so was the fear of what would happen when the contract ended. One evening, after a particularly draining family call from Claire, who threatened to tell their mother the truth, Bryn broke down in the kitchen. Zariah pulled her into a hug, the first real one since the wedding. You are not alone in this, Bryn whispered against her hair. The moment stretched their hearts beating in sync. But Zariah pulled back, reminding herself of the rules. No emotions. The pregnancy progressed with doctor visits and baby shopping trips that felt oddly domestic. Bryn chose neutral colors for the nursery while Zariah insisted on the best crib money could buy. Their arguments became less sharp, more playful, revealing a compatibility neither expected. Yet the societal prejudice followed them, online comments calling their union a sham for headlines and worse. Bryn read them in secret, her confidence shaken. Zariah noticed and deleted the apps from her phone. We do not let them define us. But inside, Zariah wondered if she was lying to herself more than to the world. The file of the contracts sat in her desk, a constant reminder of the end date. As the months passed, the internal conflicts intensified, Bryn's guilt over the deception mixing with growing affection for the woman carrying her child literally. Zariah's fear of vulnerability clashing with the urge to protect this makeshift family. The city lights continued to glow, but the real illumination was happening between two women learning that some contracts could not bind the human heart forever. The third trimester brought new challenges, the physical strain on Bryn, increasing with back pain and swollen ankles. Zariah adjusted her schedule to be home more often, massaging Bryn's feet without being asked and reading parenting books in secret. Their living situation had evolved into something resembling a real marriage, shared laughter over late-night cravings and quiet evenings watching the skyline. But the external pressures were mounting. Bryn's mother Evelyn called one afternoon, her voice weak but hopeful. I saw the photos online, honey. You look happy. Is she good to you? Bryn lied through her teeth. Yes, Mom, she is wonderful. The guilt ate at her, especially when Evelyn added, I just wish I could meet her before. Meanwhile, Zariah's father Victor was hospitalized again, demanding a visit from the happy couple. They flew to Chicago, the tension in the private jet palpable. At the hospital, Victor eyed Bryn critically. So this is the woman giving me a grandchild. Make sure it's a boy. Zariah stiffened but held her tongue, the family legacy hanging over her like a sword. Back in New York, the board called an emergency meeting, accusing Zariah of using the marriage to distract from company struggles. One member even hinted at knowing the arrangement was fake. Zariah came home furious, slamming the door. They think they can control me, but I built this empire. Bryn listened, then said softly, maybe it's time to stop hiding who you are. Zariah laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. Your family is far away. Mine is the company. The confrontation escalated into their first real fight, Bryn accusing Zariah of being emotionally unavailable, Zariah firing back that Bryn was only in it for the money. The words hurt more than either expected, leaving them in separate rooms replaying the argument. That night, Bryn felt the baby kick strongly and called out for Zariah instinctively. They ended up side by side on the bed, hands on the bump, the anger dissolving into shared wonder. The bond was undeniable now, but the moral dilemmas persisted. Was it fair to the child to start life this way? Bryn journaled her thoughts late at night, questioning every choice. Zariah did the same in her study, wondering if love could grow from such a cold start. Societal backlash hit harder when a gossip site ran a story questioning the speed of their relationship. Comments flooded and filled with homophobic slurs and accusations of using the baby for image. Bryn cried in the bathroom, Zariah holding her afterward. We are stronger than them. But the words felt like a shield against a storm. Family prejudice peaked when Claire showed up unannounced at the penthouse, demanding Bryn come home. This is not you, sis. You are confused and she is using you. The argument in the living room was heated, Claire calling it sinful, Bryn defending her decision as necessary for their mother. Zariah intervened calmly but firmly, showing Claire the paid medical bills. The visit ended in tears but no reconciliation. The pregnancy reached 36 weeks with the nursery ready and the due date approaching. In a quiet moment Zariah admitted, "I never thought I would feel this attached." Bryn smiled through her exhaustion. "Neither did I." The internal awakenings were happening slowly, but the price was high: careers at risk, family ties strained, and hearts exposed. They attended one last public event, Zariah proudly showing off the bump, the facade holding but cracking under the weight of truth. As labor signs began, the two women faced the ultimate test of their arrangement, the birth that would make everything real or break it apart forever. The labor started at midnight, Bryn's water breaking as she gasped in pain. Zariah was by her side, immediately calling the driver and holding her hand through the contractions. At the hospital, the doctors moved fast, the private suite prepared for the CEO and her wife. Hours of pushing and encouragement followed, Zariah never leaving her side, whispering words of strength. When the baby girl emerged crying loudly, the room filled with a new kind of energy. They named her Lila after Bryn's grandmother. In the recovery room, Zariah held the tiny bundle, her eyes wet for the first time Bryn had seen. "She is perfect." Bryn reached out, touching Zariah's arm. "We did this together." The first days home were a blur of feeding, sleepless nights, and overwhelming love. Lila slept between them in the bassinet, their hands brushing as they cared for her. The contract reminded them of the timeline, but the reality of parenthood was erasing the lines. Public photos of the new family went viral, the media calling it a modern fairy tale. But behind closed doors, the moral questions deepened. Bryn rocked Lila at 3 a.m. wondering if the deception would one day hurt their daughter. Zariah paced the nursery, questioning if she could let go in 5 years. Family reactions mixed, Evelyn sending gifts and blessings while Victor demanded DNA proof, but softened when he saw the photo. The board eased off temporarily, but one member, a longtime rival, started digging into the marriage records. The betrayal came from an unexpected place, Bryn's old college friend who sold a story to a tabloid hinting the marriage was arranged. The article spread fast, forcing them into damage control. Zariah hired crisis managers while Bryn shielded Lila from the noise. In a heated confrontation, Zariah accused Bryn of not being careful enough, Bryn firing back that the secrecy was Zariah's idea. The argument ended in exhausted tears and an apology that led to their first real kiss, soft and tentative, but full of unspoken feelings. They pulled away, both shocked by the spark. "This cannot happen," Zariah said, but her eyes said otherwise. Postpartum recovery brought more closeness, Zariah taking night shifts so Bryn could rest. Their conversations turned to the future. What if the contract did not have to end? But the legal documents loomed. Societal prejudice continued, with protesters outside the building one day shouting slurs about their family. Zariah confronted them, her voice steady, but inside she was terrified for Lila. Bryn held the baby close, whispering promises of protection. The awakening was mutual, both women realizing the arrangement had become their greatest truth. Yet the price was evident in the lost family ties and the constant scrutiny. As Lila grew into a smiling infant, their love deepened through small acts, Zariah singing lullabies, Bryn sketching family portraits. The internal conflicts resolved into acceptance, but the external threats built. The rival on the board leaked documents suggesting fraud. Zariah fought back in meetings, her determination fueled by the family she never planned to have. Bryn stood by her side at every step, their hands linked publicly now for real. The birth had changed everything, the child binding them in ways no contract could predict. Lila was 18 months old when she first spoke the word that shattered the remaining walls. In the sunlit living room, as Bryn lifted her high and Zariah reached for her, the toddler giggled and said "Mom," then turned to Zariah and repeated "Mom." The room fell silent, both women staring at their daughter, tears forming. It was real now, the family they had built on paper was flesh and blood. Bryn pulled Zariah into a hug, Lila between them. "She knows." Zariah held them tight, her voice breaking. "I cannot lose this." The moment marked a turning point, but crisis followed quickly. The board used the leaked documents to call for a vote on Zariah's leadership, claiming the marriage violated company ethics. Victor from his hospital bed sided with them, pressuring for divorce to save the empire. The betrayal deepened when Zariah's longtime assistant admitted to feeding information to the rival for a promotion. Confrontations erupted, Zariah firing the assistant in a heated office scene, then coming home to find Bryn packing a bag in fear. "You cannot leave," Zariah begged. "Lila needs us both." Bryn hesitated, her own family having cut all contact after the tabloid scandal. The prejudice had cost her everything but Lila and now Zariah. They spent the night talking through the pain, Zariah revealing her years of hiding her sexuality to please her father, Bryn admitting her own suppressed feelings. The kiss that followed was no longer tentative, full of years of built-up emotion and fear. But the next day the board voted Zariah out, temporarily forcing her to fight in court. Bryn stood by her at the hearings, holding Lila and facing the cameras. The sacrifices were immense, Zariah losing control of the company. She built Bryn facing online hate that threatened her mental health. Yet in the quiet evenings they found strength in each other, reading to Lila and planning a future beyond the contract. Internal awakenings peaked, Zariah realizing control was not love, Bryn understanding that true family was worth any price. A major confrontation with Victor via video call saw him disown Zariah until Lila waved at the screen calling Grandpa. The old man softened, his eyes filling with regret. The turning point came when the court ruled in Zariah's favor, the evidence of their genuine bond outweighing the leaks. But the damage was done, the company stock dipped and family bridges burned. Through it all their love grew, tender moments of holding each other after tough days, and promises whispered over Lilith's crib. The child had called them both mom, and in that simple act the lie had become the foundation of something unbreakable. Yet the costs lingered in sleepless nights worrying about the future, and the people they had hurt along the way. The final board battle raged for weeks, Zariah fighting to regain her position while Bryn managed the home front with Lila. The betrayal from the assistant led to a lawsuit, but the real war was internal, both women questioning if their choices had been worth the pain. In a late-night argument Zariah admitted, "I started this as a deal, but I am terrified of losing you now." Bryn took her hands. "Then do not let the contract win." They decided to burn the original agreement in a symbolic gesture on the balcony, the papers turning to ash as Lila slept inside. The awakening was complete, they chose love over the original plan. Zariah won back the company on the strength of her vision and the public support for their family story. Victor passed away shortly after, leaving a revised will that acknowledged their union. Bryn's mother Evelyn visited New York, finally meeting her granddaughter and slowly accepting the truth. The family pressure eased into cautious understanding, though Claire remained distant. Societal prejudice lingered, but they faced it together, attending pride events with Lila on their shoulders. The romantic moments multiplied, picnics in Central Park, where Zariah proposed for real, this time with a simple ring and no contract. Bryn said yes through happy tears. Their wedding this time was small and genuine, with close friends and Lila as flower girl. The price had been high, lost relationships, damaged reputations, and years of hiding, but the reward was a family built on truth. As they watched Lila play in the park years later, calling out to both her moms, the past felt distant. They had confronted every demon, made every hard decision, and paid every emotional cost. In the end, the arrangement that began as deception had led to the most authentic life either could imagine. When a lie creates a real family, were we wrong to start with deception or right to embrace the truth it revealed?